Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be diving in.
So today we're tackling, well, a really foundational concept, wouldn't you say? The middle way.
Absolutely. As discovered by Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, its core.
Exactly. And we're using the sources you've provided to really explore it deeply, not just as some ancient philosophy, but as, a practical path, something relevant now.
That's the key, I think.
Yeah.
It's framed in these sources as the insight that unlocked everything for him. It wasn't theory.
It came from real, intense experience.
Intense lived experience, yeah. And it has this surprising resonance for finding balance today.
In our, let's face it, pretty extreme world sometimes.
Definitely. Hyper-connected, overloaded. Yeah.
Okay. So let's open up these sources. To really get the middle way, we need to look at what came before it.
Exactly. You have to understand the extremes he explored first. That's the foundation.
So the sources detail these two paths he really threw himself into.
Right. First, there was the life he was born into, life in the palace.
Yes. Pure sensual indulgence.
Pretty much. Yeah. Every luxury, every pleasure, constant beauty, comfort. It was all designed deliberately to shield him from any suffering.
Keep reality out. And what did he find? Did it work?
Well, no. The sources make it clear that even with nonstop pleasure, it just didn't bring lasting happiness.
Didn't solve the fundamental problem.
Exactly. He still encountered sickness, old age, death, the realities of life, and that pursuit of sensation felt, well, empty, hollow.
Okay. So extreme number one, indulgence, didn't lead to liberation.
Not at all.
So then he swung completely to the other side.
Dramatically so, into extreme asceticism, self-mortification.
Pushing the body to the absolute brink.
This was a common path at the time, wasn't it? The idea that depriving, even, torturing the body
would purify the mind somehow, lead to freedom.
That was the belief. And the sources say he was incredibly committed, lived on almost nothing, became skeletal.
And crucially, these weren't just thought experiments for him.
No. He lived them fully, both extremes.
So what was the outcome of the ascetic path? Did that work?
Again, a clear no. He gained certain insights, sure, but the sources emphasized the downside.
It was
extreme physical weakness. And, importantly, his mind became clouded. He couldn't think clearly.
Couldn't sustain focus for meditation, I imagine?
Precisely. So punishing the body wasn't the answer either. It was just another dead end, really, for finding that true clarity and freedom.
So neither extreme worked. Indulgence left him feeling empty. Asceticism left him weak and foggy.
Right. But these explorations weren't failures per se.
No, they were necessary groundwork.
Exactly. They were experiments. By pushing both boundaries, he learned definitively what didn't work.
He tested the existing models and found them lacking.
Which was critical. It cleared the way for, the big insight.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. The moment the middle way actually dawned on him.
Yeah, there's this wonderful anecdote in the sources. It's quite poignant, actually.
Tell us about it. He was weakened, right, after giving up the extreme fasting.
Yes, incredibly weak, disillusioned, sitting by a river, apparently. And he overheard a music teacher.
A music teacher?
Yeah, instructing a student on tuning a lute, a stringed instrument.
Huh. After all his complex spiritual struggles, something so simple. What did he hear?
The teacher was explaining, basic physics of sound, really. If the lute string is too tight,
it snaps.
Right. Breaks, doesn't work. And if the string is too loose,
it won't make a sound, or just a dull thud.
Exactly. No music. To get that clear, harmonious sound, the string has to be tuned just right.
Not too tight, not too loose.
Precisely.
Wow. And that simple analogy just clicked for him.
It was the spark. The sources describe it as this profound realization hitting him. His body, his mind, his practice. It was like that lute string.
Ah, okay. So the extreme asceticism was pulling the string too tight.
Yes. Breaking him, preventing any clear sound or insight from emerging.
And the life of indulgence.
That was the string too loose. Slack, producing no meaningful music either, just sort of noise and distraction, attachment.
So the path forward wasn't at either extreme end.
No, it was in the balance. In finding that just right tension, moderation, sustained, skillful effort.
That clarity after abandoning the extremes, that was the birth of the middle way.
That was the moment, the insight.
Okay, so let's define this middle way more practically then, based on that insight. What does just right actually involve, according to the sources?
Well, fundamentally, it means consciously steering clear of those two extremes we just discussed. Sensual indulgence and self-mortification.
Avoiding the pitfalls he'd already mapped out.
Right. But it's crucial to understand, It's not just a weak compromise. The sources are clear on this.
It's not just meeting in the middle.
No, it's about finding the path of optimal effectiveness. That's a good way to put it.
Optimal effectiveness. I like that. It implies finding the sweet spot for real progress, not just averaging things out.
Exactly. So what it does involve is, well, caring for the body appropriately.
Meaning?
Providing enough nourishment, rest, basic comfort. Enough so the body can support the mind.
So the mind can be clear, focused, energetic for the actual work of spiritual practice and gaining insight.
Precisely. But, and this is the other side of the balance, doing so without getting caught up in it.
Without indulging to the point where it creates craving, attachment, distraction.
Which ultimately leads back to suffering. So it's finding that balance point that best supports the cultivation of wisdom, of compassion, of clarity.
And the sources connect this directly to the Eightfold Path, don't they? That's presented as the practical application of the middle way.
Yes, absolutely. The Eightfold Path is the middle way in action. It's the how-to.
It's not just 8 steps in sequence, is it?
No, the sources describe them as 8 interconnected aspects of life and practice. Cultivated together, they create that balanced, effective path.
Can you give an example of how an aspect reflects that balance?
Sure. Take right livelihood. It's one of the 8. It doesn't mean you have to be incredibly rich, nor does it mean you must be destitute.
Okay.
It means finding a way to support yourself ethically, a way that doesn't cause harm to yourself or others.
So avoiding the extremes of, say, harmful profiteering on one side and maybe crippling poverty that prevents any practice on the other.
Exactly. It's about finding that skillful, harmonious way to navigate the practicalities of life. That's the middle way in that context.
That makes the Eightfold Path feel much less like a rigid list of rules and more like a framework for applying this core principle of balance across your whole life.
It makes it feel much more, well, human. Accessible.
A path for sustainable growth, not superhuman feats of denial or indulgence.
Right. And looking back, through the lens of these sources, it's striking how revolutionary this whole idea was at the time.
Because asceticism was so dominant, that was seen as the real spiritual path.
Very much so. Many, if not most, spiritual traditions back then saw severe self-denial as the primary, maybe the only way to liberation.
So Siddhartha wasn't just tweaking things.
Not at all. He was making a radical break. He tested the prevailing dogmas himself intensely and found them wanting.
So the middle way wasn't derived from scripture or tradition, but from his own direct, hard-won experience and wisdom.
Precisely. It was a unique insight born from that experimentation.
And that story about his first 5 companions? That really drives the point home, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. They'd practiced austerities with him for years. When he finally accepted a bit of food, realizing extreme deprivation wasn't working.
They were horrified. They saw it as weakness, a failure.
They thought he'd given up, returned to indulgence. They actually left him.
Wow, it shows just how ingrained that ascetic ideal was.
It really does. And yet,
it
was after he made that shift, after he accepted nourishment and found that middle way balance.
That's when his mind cleared.
That's what allowed him the clarity and strength to sit under the Bodhi tree and finally attain enlightenment.
So the middle way wasn't just an option. The sources suggest it was the necessary condition for his breakthrough, the direct route.
It seems that way, yes. It provided the stable, clear foundation he needed.
Okay, let's bring this forward. Why should you, listening now, care about this ancient concept? How is the middle way relevant today?
Well, think about our world. It's arguably just as prone to extremes, maybe even more so, just different kinds.
Like what?
Like digital life. We swing between constant, overwhelming connection and then maybe extreme digital detoxes. Or work culture, intense hustle leading to burnout.
Or consumption. Overconsumption versus perhaps really severe, joyless restriction in diets or spending.
Exactly. We seem to naturally oscillate between these poles. The middle way offers, I think, a timeless wisdom for navigating this.
A map for finding balance in the middle of all that.
Yes. It teaches the value of finding that optimal point, that effectiveness in everything. Work, rest, relationships, how we consume information, food, goods.
So it's about avoiding being swept away by our cravings and desires.
But also avoiding being crippled by unnecessary austerity or self-denial that just makes us miserable or ineffective.
It really sounds like a call to mindfulness, to self-awareness.
Definitely. It prompts you to look at your own life. Where are you perhaps clinging to an extreme, too tight? Too loose.
In habits, maybe? Beliefs? Emotional reactions?
All of the above. And the sources suggest that just identifying those patterns is the first step.
And that consciously trying to find a more balanced approach, your own middle way,
could lead to, well, greater well-being, more sustainable energy, a clearer mind, less suffering, basically.
So it's not just about escaping some grand cycle of rebirth necessarily, but liberation from the everyday imbalances and reactivity that cause us suffering right now.
That seems to be a very practical, modern application of the principle, yes.
Yeah.
Freedom from the push and pull of daily extremes.
Okay, so to wrap up, the middle way really stands out from these sources as this incredibly profound yet practical insight.
A testament to Siddhartha's journey and a timeless path relevant to anyone seeking balance and liberation.
Thank you for exploring this with us, drawing on the sources you shared.
Fascinating topic.
And for you listening, here's something to reflect on. How might identifying areas of extreme tightness in your life, maybe rigid thinking, intense striving, holding on too hard, or extreme looseness, perhaps unchecked habits, avoidance, lack of focus, how might seeing those extremes open up possibilities for finding your own just right middle way? Something to consider.